Now, today we have three persons on the panel, and I'm pleased to share them with you. At center, we do have our Secretary of Health, Wellness, and Family Development, Councillor Tracy Davidson Celestine. To her left, we have the Deputy Presiding Officer of the THA and the Assistant Secretary in the Division of Health, Wellness, and Family Development, Assemblyman Ansel Dennis. And to the Secretary of Health's right, we have Assemblyman Hayden Spencer, and he is the Secretary of Food Production, Forestry, and Fisheries. So at this time, we will have an update from the Secretary of Food Production on his division's initiative in light of COVID-19. I welcome Mr. Spencer.
Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator. Let me first say pleasant evening to all of Tobago, pleasant evening to all members of the media. I hope that all of us are abiding by the COVID-19 rules and we are taking all the necessary initiatives to save lives. As you are aware, the Tobago House of Assembly would have established a COVID-19 committee out of the Executive Council, to which the Honorable Joel Jack is the chair, and I am also one of the members of that committee. Today, I am here to highlight some of the initiatives from the Division of Food Production, Forestry, and Fisheries as it relates to how we treat with present-day COVID-19 situation, post-COVID-19, in the area of food security and food sustainability. Oh my goodness. Excuse me. Yes. Some of the initiatives that we would have highlighted is that we are looking at some of the areas whereby we can increase food production on the island. So we would have looked at some commodities. For example, in the areas of staples, we would have looked at cassava, sweet potatoes, and dashi. Food crops, we would have looked at banana, plantains, pigeon peas. Vegetables, we would have looked at tomatoes, sweet peppers, cabbage, okra, cucumbers, pumpkin, and lettuce. Herbs and spices, we would have looked at celery, chive, thyme, shadow benny, and ginger. In the area of livestock, we would have looked at broiler meat production, poultry, egg production, sheep and goat production, rabbit production, and provision of breeding stock in the area of pigs, sheep, and goat. We would have also looked at crops with agro-processing potential: mango, cassava, sweet potato, plantain, banana, pomsite, or breadfruit, etc., that we have available on the island. Specific policy measures for increasing agriculture production on the island. We would have looked at our land preparation services. Although already highly subsidized, the division is willing to offer its tractor pool services free of charge to farmers for land preparation in an attempt to further increase individuals and organizations' interest in the involvement in farming. We would have targeted, the division has presently a fleet of 4 tractors. We are saying that we have targeted 2 new wheel tractors to augment the strength of the tractor service that we have as part of the COVID-19 response to food security. Specific crop production incentives. This incentive is intended to specifically target increase in acreages of food security crops through new establishment of farms of selected commodities for expansion of existing farms already producing these specified crops. The following production incentives are as follows. We intend to give percentage to sweet potato and cassava farmers who will increase their operations to at least 10 acres. Pigeon peas also 10 acres. Banana and plantains 10 acres. Vegetables 10 acres. Herbs and spices 5 acres. The division is prepared with the technical staff to undertake and inspect all these establishments to ensure that the necessary good agriculture practices will be carried out. Increasing supply of planting material. The division will increase the supply of planting materials to farmers to meet the demands through its various propagation facilities, such as the Lewis Daw nurseries, the demonstration stations, Law Planting Material Repository, Goldsboro, the Corn Agriculture Project, the Goldsboro Tissue Culture Laboratory, and the Goldsboro Herbs and Spices Project. Stations will be required adequate staffing and resources to meet this requirement. Short and medium-term production of planting materials by stations. We have the Lewis Daw nurseries will deal with the vegetable seasons. The Lewis Daw demonstration station will deal with the potato slips and the cassava cuttings. The Plant and Tissue Culture Laboratory, currently in production of plantains. They will deal with the plantains, the production of bananas, and also dashi. The Leo Respiratory and Colon will deal with also sweet potato slips, cassava cuttings, pineapple suckers, ginger, also vegetable seedlings, cassavas, and sweet potato. We also, in the area of livestock, we are looking at that incentive to increase the breeding stock on the island in the area of pigs, small ruminants, goat, and sheep. Incentive for this incentive will go in the way of areas where the division does not have the capacity as to distribute to all the livestock farmers, and there are farmers on the island with weaners that meet the necessary requirement. The division will be willing to purchase these weaners from the farmers to distribute to other farmers. But they must meet the criteria that the division would have outlined. Irrigation for farmers. Yes, we are also saying that there is usually a 50% irrigation incentive for farmers that already exists. We are saying due to the COVID-19 pandemic, we will increase that incentive to 100%. In the area of land clearing, we estimate that we will undertake to clear lands for new farmers so that they can get into immediate production. In the area of livestock also, we are dealing with poultry now. We want to increase the medium farms that we have and small farms that we have on the island, that some farms are doing up to 3,000 birds. We want them to increase to 10,000 birds. And there will be incentives outlined for the increase in this productivity from 30%, which is normally had by livestock farmers in these areas, to 75%. The division will continue to promote existing incentive on rabbit production to encourage more investment in rabbit rearing enterprises. Greater involvement in the youth of Tobago in agriculture through land distribution. There is already a process that exists in the land management department whereby persons, citizens so required to achieve land for farming can apply. However, the division would have, in 2017, would have started an initiative with 45 young people that we would have trained in the youth apprenticeship program in agriculture for 18 months. And we are proposing to start off these farmers, as initially was part of the program, to start them off in the various crops that I would have identified earlier. The home gardening initiative, we have 700 registered home gardeners, and we are opening up this home gardening initiative to all members of the public. You can call and register. I will give you that number to call later on. So we want to beef up home garden initiative by also including the home gardeners in the incentive program, where we will be also offering the incentive that was outlined previously to members of the home gardening initiative, where we'll be offering incentive in water equipment and water systems of up to 50%. Agro-processing, the division intends to vigorously support and create the enabling environment for successful agro-processing enterprises in Tobago. And with that, we are going to increase that agriculture incentive program for agro-processing from 45% to 70%. We suspect that, and I would not want to leave the public wondering, well, what we're going to do with all this food when we get into all this farming. So we already take a look at the post-harvest facilities and cold storages on the island in the area of Tikoswab, and we will have Tikoswab increase its capacity on the island to store food. And in this case, we also will be offering incentives to farmers in the area of 50% who are so willing to set up their own storage facility. Right? What I would have outlined there is an estimated budget of $7.62 million. Presently on hand, what we have available to distribute at the Plant Tissue Culture Lab, we have 2,320 planting suckers that are ready for distribution. At the Food Crop Department, we have pioneer corn 33 pounds, string beans 300 grams, squash pumpkin 150 grams, sweet pepper 1,200 grams, beetroot 200 grams, lettuce 150 grams, pigeon peas 250 grams, contender beans 500 grams. At Leo Respiratory, we also have sweet potato and cassava planting material ready to be distributed. At the herbs and spices, we have shadow benny, chive, thyme, parsley, and rosemary. Now, saying this, I would have observed that we sent out a press brief, and a number of people would have already gone to the Lewis Door nursery station over at Glen Road at our head office. This is not for anyone to go anywhere to collect anything. What I would have highlighted there, I want you to call this number, 639-2234, extension number 3584 and 5. Your information will be recorded and you will be contacted. We all have to adhere to our COVID-19 response to stay at home. We do not want anybody leaving home unnecessarily, saying that you're going to Louisdor because you're here, they're giving away seats. Call this number. I would have spoken to the administrator and the technical officer to ensure that between the hours of 8 and 4, persons will be available to answer this hotline. Take your information and we will get back to you. Please stay at home and abide by the initiatives that outlined by your health authorities. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
All right. Thank you. Thank you very much, Assemblyman Spencer. We now move on to the social responses coming out of the Division of Health, Wellness and Family Development. So to update on that, I invite Assemblyman Ansel Dennis.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon to members of the media and by extension the listening public. It's always a pleasure to be here to update the people of Tobago and by extension Trinidad and Tobago as it relates to my areas of responsibility. The reality is that when we look at the entire picture in the world, the situation is grim. There are presently over 2.7 million COVID cases across the world, over 193,000 deaths, and of course, this pandemic has so far impacted 185 countries. But I think in the midst of this, we ought to count our blessings. And at this point in time, this island and this country is quite fortunate to be in the position that we are in at this time. We have not seen any significant increases in the number of cases, both in Tobago and in Trinidad. And in that context, I want to congratulate the leaders, of course, the Prime Minister, Minister of Health, the Chief Medical Officer here in Tobago, our Secretary of Health, the Chief Secretary, Medical Chief of Staff, of course, Dr. Hoyt here in Tobago, because I think all of them have worked tremendously hard over the last few months to ensure that we manage the situation on the health side. And I think so far we have responded significantly well, especially here in Tobago. We have taken a number of important decisions early on, especially as it relates to our quarantine approach. And we have managed to detect some cases that may have caused potential increases at the community level. But of course, apart from the health side, we ought to pay attention to the social needs of the people. And I dare say that even as we manage the health aspect, in my opinion, very well at this point, I think the real challenge will be our social response. Because as we speak, a number of persons are already impacted, having lost jobs. A number of persons are reaching out for social assistance by way of hampers, food cards, etc. And therefore, I want to give the people of Tobago the assurance that your Tobago House of Assembly has responded and we continue to respond to the needs of all Tobagonians. As I speak, we have already counseled 35 Tobagonians who have reached out to our hotlines seeking emotional and psychological support due to the impact of this pandemic. And of course, the hotline continues to be available to all Tobagonians, and I'm encouraging every single person who is impacted, who might be depressed, worried, anxious because of your circumstances, please reach out to the hotlines. I think there are approximately 10 professional counselors within the division, and they are waiting and ready to assist every single Tobagonian. So far, we have also issued 906 emergency food cards. The Secretary of Finance is also in the process of ramping up that program. We plan to bring into the system a further 5,000 emergency food cards that will be made available to Tobagonians. And I want to remind persons of the process. Of course, if you can, go online to the division's website. All that information has already been placed into the public domain. Download the forms, print the forms, and of course, submit the applications as far as possible using that method in order for us to adhere to the social distancing guidelines. Assemblymen have made their offices available as well so that persons can reach out and receive the necessary assistance, those who may have difficulty with filling out the forms. In addition to that, the Ministry of Social Development, through the 2 members of Parliament here in Tobago, have provided approximately 500 food cards, and these food cards will run for a period of 3 months in the first instance, and of course the government intends to increase that to 6 months if the need arises, and we do expect that the need will arise. And I want to bring some clarity in that regard, because our circumstances in Tobago is somewhat different to what occurs in Trinidad. In Trinidad, only specific students, based on their circumstances, receive school feeding. In Tobago, I believe every single child receives school feeding. And therefore, while the cards that the MPs will be distributing are targeted towards homes and households where children who are on the school feeding program reside, it is not a situation where every single child or every single household with a child who receives school feeding will be getting a food card. That is simply not possible. So those food cards will be targeted to persons who are in need, but of course the main qualifying criteria is that there must be a child in that household who is also on the school feeding program. Of course, outside of that, persons can also apply for food support and rental assistance, again through the Ministry of Social Development. So far in Tobago, the Division of Health, Wellness and Family Development, we have submitted approximately 363 forms on behalf of Tobagonians. Assemblymen across the island have also submitted a number of forms on behalf of persons. And I contacted the Minister of Social Development earlier today, Honorable Camille Robinson-Regis, and she has given the assurance that by the end of this month, persons who applied so far should start receiving the necessary assistance. So of course, the forms are still available for persons to apply, and I want to give Tobagonians the assurance as well that the Division of Health, Wellness and Family Development through the Community Social Services Unit is also prepared to assist persons who for some reason may not qualify for the assistance at the national level. So Tobagonians are quite fortunate in the circumstances in that we are saying if for some reason you were rejected by the Ministry of Social Development, the THA is prepared to consider your application and give the assistance where necessary. We also have given out approximately 200 hampers at the level of the Tobago House of Assembly. We are currently again in the process of ramping that up because, of course, as this situation progresses, we expect that the needs of the persons will continue to increase. So we are preparing to change the situation daily. We are prepared to keep planning and keep responding to the needs of the people of Tobago. But the reality is that the Tobago House of Assembly and the government cannot do it alone. And of course, across Tobago, a number of NGOs, private business owners in the private sector, assemblymen, and individuals have rendered assistance in this time of need. And therefore, I also want to congratulate those individuals and encourage them to continue. And I want to extend a call to all of Tobago. Because, you know, we have this slogan that we have adopted in the midst of this crisis, that we are all in this together. But I want to take a page from the book of the military. Because, you know, the Prime Minister has said time and time again, this is a war, and every single individual has been enlisted as a soldier in this war. And one of the things that they say in the military is leave no man behind. And therefore, I am encouraging every single Tobagonian to help where you can, help as much as possible. And you know, even while the churches are closed, and yes, persons will continue to pay their tithes, I think some churches have put systems in place to ensure that people continue to pay their tithes. But I'm also recommending that every Tobagonian who is employed, whether in the private sector or the public sector, that you should consider giving 10% of your salary towards COVID relief efforts in your community, on your street, or even in your own yard if the need arises. So I'm saying if your salary is, let's say, $5,000, 10% of that can be, or is actually $500. And that $500 could go a long way in assisting a family or two with some much needed food supplies. So I'm saying if we do that, and we partner with the private sector, and we partner with our government, in this case the THE administration, and we continue to adhere to all the guidelines, stay at home if you're not required to be outside, adhere to social distancing guidelines, I'm saying we can in fact come out on top in this difficult situation. And while I can conclude that we are winning the battle, I want to caution us so that we don't assume that we have already won. There is still a lot of work to do, not just us here in the government, not just among the healthcare workers, but among all of Tobago. And I'm saying we must do all in our power to ensure that in this situation, no Tobagonian is left behind.
All right. Thank you very much, Assemblyman Dennis, for your presentation. So at this time, we will move on to Councillor Tracy Davidson Celestine, who would give us further updates on the division's continued response to COVID-19 in Tobago. Secretary.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. George, who is our Senior Communications Officer in the Division of Health, Wellness, and Family Development. And let me also thank my two colleagues for attending this press conference today. On my right, we have the Secretary of Agriculture, and I also have on my left the Assistant Secretary in the Division of Health, Wellness, and Family Development, and who has the responsibility to assist in charting the course where family development and wellness is concerned. I am here to give you an overview of what has been happening with regards to our response to COVID over the last few weeks, since our last press conference rather. And I wish to emphasize and to let the public know that the COVID task force team continues to meet on a very regular basis. As a matter of fact, we meet at least 3 times per month, utilizing, of course, the technology. What we are attempting to do now is to plan for a possible second wave on the island. In the first scenario, in the first wave, we were very fortunate to have only sporadic cases. But as I would have indicated sometime in one of our press conferences, we never know what is around the corner. And so in order to mitigate any effects, in order to mitigate any challenges, we must ensure that we plan. And this is where our team is at this point. I have decided to break up the members of the committee into different teams to look at different areas. One, we are focusing on detection, response, and also research, assisting or putting systems in place to build our capabilities and our capacities in research. On the detection, the team is now focused on looking at a number of critical areas, or laboratory services, surveillance and risk assessment, contact tracing, and of course ensuring that we have our rapid response teams out into, or rapid response planning approach, so that once as any situation arises, we would be able to treat with it, whether it be in the communities or otherwise. We have also been focused on how we would respond in the event that we should have an overwhelming number of persons coming to our healthcare facilities and eventually testing positive. We have looked at how we will command and coordinate. We have looked at how we will roll out our risk communication strategies. We are assessing our different point of entries into the island. We are looking at our case management strategies, infection prevention and control, and of course, logistics, procurement at this time, and supplies management, because we want to ensure that we have enough of supplies to treat with any situation that is likely to affect us. And of course, all of this must be driven by research going forward. We have a member on our task force, or COVID task force, who has been utilizing the WHO models to plot different scenarios treating with phase 2 or phase 3 of the COVID pandemic here. And we also have a team looking at infrastructure and communication and public education, to name a few. I would have mentioned earlier some of the areas under laboratory services that we have been looking at and how we have been working with a view to bringing our lab up to speed, so at least we can perform satisfactory testing at the lab. And I would have indicated to you that by the end of this month, we expect that the new equipment purchased will be installed at the lab, and that we would be able to not only do general testing on behalf of Tobagonians, but to ensure that we can also undertake some COVID testing as well. Contact tracing is ongoing, and it's part of our second wave planning approach as well, and that is being led at this point in time by the public health officials, including Dr. Hoyt and her team. And then we have, as I indicated, we have our rapid response team approach, and that is led by TEMA, so to speak. And so we have been looking at those 5 areas: detection, response, research, and ensuring that we treat with our infrastructure requirements going forward, and that we continue to educate and communicate with the public as much as is possible. Apart from that, we have been focused on strengthening our health system so that we can improve delivery of service, so that we can improve our performance. Bearing in mind that I'm not talking about improving the service to treat with COVID positive patients or persons who are coming to the hospital to be tested, but I'm talking about improving the overall delivery of care for all of Tobago, or for Tobagonians at this point in time. And I have been working along with the Chief Executive Officer, the administrator, members of staff at TRHA, and the chairlady to ensure that we can treat with all those outstanding matters that require urgent attention. I know that the incinerator has been causing quite a lot of concern in the public domain as we continue to burn biomedical waste. For some time now, those incinerators were down, but they are functioning now, but there are some challenges. And what has been considered is a non-incinerator waste management system. And I have been advised by the chair lady of the TRHA as well as the CEO that the equipment is here in Tobago, and that once the borders are open, the team will travel from overseas to do the installation and, of course, the training of staff. And so in the not-so-distant future, this system will help us to alleviate any challenges with smoke emissions complained, of course, by the neighbors who are, of course, in close proximity at the hospital. And what is envisaged is that the microwave technology will be used. We have also been, or the team rather, has also been undertaking a number of different infrastructural works at the hospital. For some time now, the hot water system has been down at the hospital. To date, I can safely say that all systems are functional and there is hot water in all of the hospital at this point in time. I spoke about ventilators at our last press conference, and we have requested an additional 4 ventilators from Trinidad. I am advised by our medical chief of staff that those ventilators will arrive the next week, Monday, and we have 1 member of staff who will be assigned to be a part of the commissioning exercise. I spoke of the laboratory that will be in effect on the 27th of April, and we will be installing the hematology analyzer. And of course, we are doing some modifications to the lab at this moment in time. We continue to have regular breakdowns at the hospital with regards to our X-ray machines, with regards to a number of different equipments, because of course you know that at some point in time equipment will malfunction. I am pleased to indicate that the TRHA has since signed a contract with an agent who will provide regular maintenance of equipment at the hospital. And of course, the maintenance plan has been completed for medical imaging equipment as well. And to facilitate preventative maintenance, parts have been procured to have a ready stock of equipment on hand. We have also undertaken to address the long outstanding issue of the air condition at the hospital as well. The CEO and the chairlady have both indicated that the scope of works have been completed, and the request for tender will be tabled at the next meeting of the board to be held on May 7th, 2020. The likely cost of fixing that air condition at the hospital is expected to be approximately $5 million. What I don't have in front of me is the length of time the equipment will take to start operationalizing. Apart from that, we have been looking at the payment of a number of suppliers for goods and services, looking at how we will come up with an approach to treating with outstanding gratuities. We have quite a lot of nurses, quite a lot of doctors who are owed significant sums of money. And apart from that, we have some suppliers who were also owed significant sums of money from the TRHA. Up to this point, suppliers were paid a total of $22,785,000 in the month of April. And so we have cleared the majority of those debts. I am informed by the chair lady that with regards to the outstanding gratuity for the year 2017, there are 108 employees who are ready to be paid. That will be total. That comes to a total of $3.4 million. For the year 2018, total number of 89 persons are ready to be paid, and that amounts to $3.9 million. So the total in gratuity that is ready to be paid at this point in time, and when I say ready, it would have gone through the Board of Inland Revenue, is estimated at roughly $7.4 million. And because we would have received some funding very recently, I am pleased to announce that by the 14th of May latest, those persons will receive their gratuity payments, those who are ready for the year 2017 and also 2018. The point I am making, ladies and gentlemen, is that we have been working endlessly to ensure that we have a proper response plan to treating with the COVID-19. And more than that, we have been working very hard to ensure that we can treat and bring our systems up to speed at both the hospital and, of course, the other health centers that are under the care of the TRHA and also the Division of Health, Family Development, and, of course, Wellness. And so the team and I will continue to plan to ensure that we can mitigate any significant effects to the population and that Tobagonians have a predictable and effective level of health care service on this island. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you, Councillor Tracy Davidson Celestine, our Secretary of Health, Wellness and Family Development, for your presentation. Before we continue, I just want to interject one quick thing. The Secretary did mention that the COVID-19 task force meets 3 times per month. It's actually 3 times per week. So it's that frequency with which the team meets. Just a quick small correction with that. So we will open the floor virtually to our media personnel, but we do have some ground rules. So we all know that we have the virtual hands, so I already see some hands up. So once you have a question, please raise your virtual hand. We really want to get as much questions in and give everyone the opportunity equally to ask their questions. So we're asking 3 questions at a time. And remember, we are COVID related. It is a diverse panel. So we have agriculture, we have the social services side of things, and we have health. I also ask, well, the media personnel, you would have been sent an invite with a number, a cell phone number, that if it is you're not plugged into Zoom, you can send your questions via WhatsApp. And lastly, I'm asking persons to please listen to the questions through their device that is connected to Zoom and not on the live stream. The live stream, it is a bit delayed, so we're asking you to tune into your device that is logged into Zoom so that we can have a proper synchrony of the information coming across. So at this time, I will invite, I see Mr. Whitfield Turner of I-95.5. Once again, tune into your device via Zoom and not on the live stream. Mr. Turner, you can go ahead with your questions.
Good afternoon, Mr. George.
Good afternoon.
Everyone. I actually have quite a lot of questions here, so I'll have to ask
3 at a time, please. Thank you.
Right. And first up to Councillor Davidson Celestine. Yesterday, a request was made by the minority for inclusion on the COVID committee. Is that something that you would support and would seek to bring to fruition? My other two questions for now are for Assemblyman Spencer. The measures that you have outlined today, some persons since the release was issued have been saying basically we've been down that road before in terms of hearing that these are initiatives that are going to take place. What assurances can you give that this time is going to be different? For example, persons may have asked for tractors to plow the land so that they can plant, and the tractors never came. Can you give them any assurance that that would not happen this time around? And my final question for now, also to Mr. Spencer, you mentioned the issue of ramping up food storage capacity across the island. What about the initiative as it pertains to bartering? Is that something that you would also like to see happening? So maybe someone who is versed in ground provisions may be able to barter with someone who's doing fruits and vegetables, that sort of thing. Is that something that you would like to see happen as well? I'll pause there for now.
All right, thank you. So just a reminder, the questions to Secretary Tracy Davison Celestine. Any consideration for inclusion of persons from the minority to be a part of the COVID committee?
Well, I think I would have responded to that question sometime before, and we continuously do an assessment, and where there exist gaps in terms of skill sets on the committee, we will add persons accordingly. In my last press conference, I did indicate that we needed a research officer, and we have since added a research element to the committee, and the doctor would have done the presentation for us in terms of the different possibilities, how to prepare information that is critical to facilitate the planning. And I would have also indicated an IT person. We have a member of staff from the division who assists with our IT capabilities. And more than that, I indicated that we will also engage the services of a project manager. We have since done that, and we now have representation on the team from the Division of Works and Infrastructure, and they are leading the physical upgrades that is likely to take place at the old hospital and anywhere else that we deem fit to assist us in treating with phase 2 if and when it happens. So as the life of the committee progresses, once as there is a need for a particular skill set, we would look to see who best represents and can execute those skill sets to complement the rest of the COVID task force.
All right, and to Assemblyman Spencer, one question on the assurance is that the initiatives will come to fruition. Response on that?
Okay, I can give you all the assurance that these programs will be rolled out. And as you mentioned, tractor pool services, I want to answer you in that area and clear that up, not only to you, but to the public. You see, there's a system in tractor pool whereby farmers go, you make the request, you pay your money. The officer in charge now has to come up with a work plan as to how he works the staff and the tractors. So, for example, they will look at the number of farmers that would have made requests from the east, and they will say, this month we'll go to the east and we'll treat with the farmers in the east that made requests. And next month, we're going to go to the farmers in the west or the north, as the case may be. What the farmers are complaining about, the officer will now leave up in the east and is now in the north. And farmers from the east are now coming today, and they want to pay for tractor service today and gets it tomorrow. They don't want to hear that we have the north and the west to finish before we come back to the east. So my information is from my technical officer that we, when the COVID-19 pandemic issue would have just started, we would have stopped operation. We'll be starting back from next week, Monday, and he has given me the assurance that out of the workload that they have there and the names that were registered and paid for, they are 90% completed. So I do not foresee any further challenges, especially if we have acquired the additional 2 tractors.
The last question, any consideration to bartering as an
Okay.
initiative for food storage?
Well, bartering is always there. And this is not an initiative that policymakers can outline. This is an initiative, farmer to farmer, family to family, association to association. This is something that the public farmers have to derive on their own. For example, I cannot say to a farmer, or the technical officer say to a farmer, well, you have okras, so you take plantain from this farmer and he has to take okra from you. No, that is something that they has to come up with themselves. Okay?
Thank you. As we move on with our questions from the media, we invite at this time Clayton Clark, Radio Tambourine, 92.7. Good afternoon, Clayton.
Good afternoon, Mr. George, and to members of the head table there.
Good afternoon.
3 questions. First one to Councillor Tracy Davidson Celestine. You outlined that a new incinerator, microwavable, what have you, has arrived in the island. Good for that. One, what are the residents supposed to do while we wait for Corona, and the Corona issue to wait to pass for these officials to arrive? Why asking that is because up to Tuesday, persons were vomiting. Persons cannot go outside their house. I visited there a couple of weeks ago to see the distress. Persons cannot hang clothes on their line. It is, what are you going to do to, assess what sort of damage? I said persons were vomiting. Some of these are retired persons there. We are asked to stay home. Stay home and endure suffering health-wise. So what are you all going to do to probably assess the health status of these people? Second question, Mr. Dennis, you mentioned calling on working Tobagonians to donate 10% of their earnings. We see in other parts of the countries, the government or cabinet ministers, MPs are donating parts of their salaries. What is the THA doing? Are you all thinking about that to show solidarity to Tobagonians? Third question to Mr. Spencer. You outlined all these initiatives. Is it specific to COVID-19, or these are things you all have to unveil for quite a while now, and we're now hearing of them, or they're ongoing and we're not aware of them, meaning the media? But anything that's specific to addressing the COVID-19 situation or whatever food shortages that you all may envisage going to happen in the next coming days, months, etc. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. First question to Sec.
I think we must do a health needs assessment in terms of the utilization of the incinerator because it's a challenge for those who are living close to the hospital at this point in time. And the issue would have come up at almost every meeting that we would have had within recent times. The challenge for us is that on a daily basis, we generate about 475 kilograms of biomedical waste. And because the incinerators were down for quite some time, we have quite a lot of waste to burn. Perhaps what can be considered is a scheduling of burning, but more so, we have looked at whether we can outsource the burning at this time. But of course, we have challenges receiving quotations because of the COVID situation, which required non-essential businesses to stop function, basically. So we have the challenge of having quite a lot of waste at the space to be burnt, and we also have the challenges of trying to minimize the emissions to the public. And we also have the COVID situation where hardly any decisions can be taken to outsource because of the challenges that we continuously face. But we are going to look at it. As I said, the health needs assessment will be done, and perhaps we would have to reduce the frequency with which we burn in order to treat with that in the shortest possible time frame.
All right, thank you. And on to Assemblyman Dennis. Any consideration from the THA to donate a percentage of salaries towards COVID-19 relief efforts?
Right. In terms of salary cuts, of course, we see a number of jurisdictions across the world engaging in that, and for various reasons. In some cases, it is due to the economic realities. In some cases, it's a matter of showing solidarity. But I do not ask anybody to do anything that I'm not myself prepared to do. And as we speak, I have launched an initiative today that seeks to assist our seniors and other persons with disabilities in terms of purchasing groceries and pharmaceuticals during this stay-home period, and the flyer, of course, is on my Facebook page. Since I've been an assemblyman, I've used, on many occasions, personal funding to assist persons in many different ways. And that continues to happen, and it will increase during this pandemic. So I am asking others to consider doing the same. I have done it, and I continue to do it. And while a salary cut may sound good politically, the question I will have in my mind is how exactly will it benefit individuals during this pandemic? Yes, maybe if the funding is going to a specific account where it will be used to purchase food supplies, etc., maybe it will go directly to those persons. But I'm saying it's better if individuals can take a personal decision without being prompted by anybody to assist persons during this time.
Right, thank you. And on to Assemblyman Spencer. Are the initiatives that you outlined specific to COVID-19 or not?
Okay, some of the initiatives are specific to COVID-19 in the area of the incentives. Other initiatives are already part of our strategic plan, part of our agriculture revitalization plan, which due to the COVID-19, we just have to fast track some of them, basically.
All right, thank you very much, Assemblyman. So we move on with our media questions. We have at this time Stephen Cummings from 98.1. Pleased to have you, Stephen. Afternoon.
Good afternoon to you, and good afternoon to the panel.
Good afternoon.
Stephen Cummings, 98.1 FM from Trinidad. I have a question which is open to any member of the panel, and I think more specifically Assemblyman Spencer. He outlined a number of measures relative to treating with the business of distribution of resources. Now, I specifically noted a $7.62 million, which he said is being earmarked basically for the development of food production in Tobago. Is it possible that we can get a breakdown as to what specific areas? Are we talking poultry? Are we talking other types of food production initiatives? I just want to get a breakdown concerning this $7.62 million.
All right, thank you. Assemblyman Spencer, can you give a breakdown of those monies that were outlined for food production, $7.62 million?
Okay, if I should run through this quickly, in the area of the purchasing of 2 new wheel tractors, $1 million. In the area of incentives for the root and tubers and herbs and spices, $200,000. In the area of distribution of seedlings and planting material in general, $1.25 million. The process of acquiring weaner pigs in the first instance, $200,000. Crop irrigation, incentives for irrigation and for the new farmers and farmers, present-day farmers, and also home garden initiatives, $1 million. Incentive for the construction of rabbiteries, $825,000. The establishment of forage bank for farmers with small ruminants, $300,000. The youth apprenticeship program in agriculture, $1 million. The home gardening initiative, $1.25 million. And the cold storage facilities, $200,000, totaling $7.625 million.
All right, thank you very much, Assemblyman Spencer. Stephen, any other questions before I move on?
One final question as we move on quickly. I just wanted to get an idea as to how Secretary Davidson is treating with this whole COVID-19 in a general sense. We talked about some of the specifics in terms of what the TH has been doing, but overall, one is also concerned about post-COVID-19. How is the Tobago economy? What is it going to look like going forward on the aspect of sustainability and being able to get over the hill, as it were?
And Stephen, we're asking 3 questions, so that's your second one. Do you have a third one before we move on?
Keep it there for now.
Okay, thank you very much, Stephen. So I know that that question will have some response from the Secretary of Finance, who has responsibility for the economy. But I will ask Secretary to just give an overall thing on generally how we're dealing with COVID in Tobago.
Outside of what we are doing in the Division of Health, Wellness and Family Development, there are other divisions who are responding in like manner. Whenever there is a press conference, those secretaries will come to the table. Last week, we had the secretary with responsibility for community development and enterprise development who outlined a number of different initiatives having to do with businesses, where we will have moratorium on the payment of interest and loan payments rather, for a period of 6 months, where we have determined that we will increase the ceilings for some of the grants to be dispersed once as the application process is approved, and a number of different initiatives coming from her division. Today, we have the Secretary of Agriculture who has outlined the Home Initiative Garden program. He has spoken about giving out of seedlings, getting tractor pool to provide soil services. But more than that, we have put together a committee that will help to do an assessment and determine different courses of action to be taken to help with the resuscitation of the Tobago's economy. Of course, we know that the tourism sector makes a significant contribution to the economic development, economic growth of Tobago, and I know that the committee has been given that responsibility to do an assessment and to come up with different initiatives that will help us to move the development of the stimulus arrangement for the tourism sector as well as other sectors throughout the island. So you will hear more in terms of the different approaches from the THA when other secretaries come to the table.
All right, thank you. Move along to Elizabeth Williams from TV6 News. Good afternoon, Elizabeth.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
Elizabeth Williams, TV6. I just had 3 questions. I know that yesterday the minority would have suggested remuneration packages for frontline medical healthcare workers. I don't know if this is going to be looked at. We know that they have been giving their all in Trinidad and Tobago with respect to COVID-19. Also, in addition, I'm hearing that most pharmacies in Tobago are not accepting the CDAP anymore. in terms of it's being hard for persons who have diabetes and patients with high blood pressure. I don't know if this could be looked into. And to Mr. Spencer, Goldsboro farmers, Pig Farm Road and also Cow Farm Road in Goldsboro, they are having a constant problem with water. I know that you are encouraging persons to plant, but there is a big problem in Goldsboro with the water supply in terms of WASA. It's a long-standing issue that was rectified in the past, but now the problem is still there. How soon will this be rectified?
All right, so the first question to our Secretary of Health, any consideration for remuneration packages for frontline healthcare workers?
That has not been considered at this point in time. What we are attempting to do, and I would have conveyed that on many occasions, is to treat with the outstanding gratuity payments. And as I would have indicated earlier, to date, we have over approximately 300, is it? Approximately 200 persons who are ready to be paid, persons from 2017 and also 2018, amounting to $7.4 million approximately. And we are working towards ensuring that we can treat with all the outstanding gratuity for health practitioners, as well as there are some outstanding monies for medical officers and arrears of increments or overtime for monthly paid officers as well. And those have already been budgeted for and will be drawn down from the second set of monies that we would have received very recently.
All right, the second one, just in, well, more of a statement that most pharmacies not accepting the CDAP program and just asking that it be looked into. And the third to the Secretary of Finance, of Food Production, sorry, the issue with the water at Goldsboro and asking how soon it will be addressed. Noting, I know it's a WASA issue, but I don't know if you have any additional information to share on it.
Well, it's not really a WASA issue. Okay, the Division of Food Production, Forestry and Fisheries is well aware of that project called the Goldsboro Irrigation Project. What we would have done so far, we would have engaged UDICOT project manager for that project. UDICOT would have engaged Well Caribbean Services Limited. Well Caribbean Services Limited are at the final stages of doing a feasibility study. They are now doing geographical mapping. Okay? So as soon as that is completed, because the contractor, Wells Caribbean Services Limited, would have already mobilized equipment, and equipment are on site. So we were given the assurance that as long as the project startup, it should be completed within 6 to 8 weeks. So far, they are still completing the feasibility study. And that's where we're at. So I'm not in a position to give you an end date unless the project itself starts.
All right, thank you, Assemblyman Spencer. We move along with our questions. Akinlabi Holder from Tobago Channel 5. Good afternoon, Akinlabi.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yes, Akinlabi Holder, Tobago Channel 5. My questions are for the Secretary of Food Production. First, Forestry and Fisheries. Secretary, you mentioned your initiatives, but I just wanted to find out what is going on with the agricultural revitalization plan. Do these initiatives fall within the plan? That's one question. Two, in your presentation today, as well as the press release earlier this week, we didn't see anything concerning fisheries. And given that the borders are closed and we have a significant amount of importation of fish in Trinidad and Tobago, what are your division's plans for the bolstering of the fisheries industry? And finally, in putting out your press release and creating this plan, did you meet with stakeholders such as the agricultural societies and the extension officers?
Thank you very much, Akinlabi. So the first question, if the initiatives fall within the agricultural revitalization plan. Secretary.
Yes, sir. Some of the initiatives are directly out of the agricultural revitalization plan, which I have mentioned before, and some are out of the division strategic plan. Okay?
All right, the second question, what about fisheries and the boosting of this industry, especially amidst the COVID-19 stay-at-home orders and the lockdown?
Okay, as it relates to the fisheries sector, fishermen will not ask not to go at sea. Fishermen are still fishing. Fishermen are still catching fish. However, we have a regular program where we, with the fish processing company, where we want to increase fish processing on the island, increase storage facility on the island. We would have already, through TCOSWAV, increased ice available to fishermen. So basically the fisheries, as it relates to the revitalization plan, it's already ongoing. So it is not mentioned in this plan due to the fact that it's already ongoing. We were already looking at the fishing facilities, how we are going to refurbish them and recondition them and change the way some of the operations are taking place. So all these are already ongoing. All right, so that's why it's not mentioned in this plan.
All right, and the third question, if stakeholders were consulted in the formulation of this plan?
In this plan, the reason why stakeholders were not consulted, these are extracts of already consulted plans. The agriculture revitalization plan, consulted. The division's strategic plan, already consulted. These are extracts. So there was no reason to go back to the Agriculture Society. Okay? So what we have here is the technical officer, technical advisor, extension officers, agricultural officers sitting down and extracting from the plan, and we came up with these programs. So all these initiatives were already discussed with stakeholders.
All right, thank you. So we go back to Mr. Whitfield Turnoff, I-95.5 FM. Whitfield?
Yes, thank you very much. Let me begin with Secretary Davidson Celestine about the incinerator issue. Can consideration be given to having a request for an exemption submitted to the National Security Minister to have the technicians come into the country? So once the flight arrangements are made, that request can then be put to him so that they can come and rectify the issue in short order. Also, can you give us an update on the procurement process for the field hospital that you would have mentioned previously? And my other question for Assemblyman Spencer, I didn't hear any mention being made about boosting beekeeping. Is that something that's also being looked at to increase our production of honey in Tobago? I have a couple more questions, but I'll hold there for now.
Thank you. Secretary Tracy Davidson Celestine, as it pertains to consideration for exemption for the team to come in.
That has not been considered in any of our discussions, but if it is a worthwhile, if it is a feasible idea, then it will be explored.
Right, an update on the procurement process for the field hospital.
With regards to the field hospital, I know that responsibility is with TEMA at this point, and they have been treating with quotations and looking at how the field hospital will be built out, basically. And so I will obtain more information to share at our next press conference. But that is all I have for this point in time.
All right, and Assemblyman Spencer, any consideration for boosting beekeeping on the island?
Okay, yes, there's a consideration for boosting beekeeping on the island. I would have met with the Apiary Association previously, And what we would have done that never used to happen in the past, we would have also made it as part of our annual budgetary request that the beekeepers are now receiving a subvention. And therefore, it is upon the Beekeepers Association to come up with something to say, well, listen, because of COVID-19, this subvention is either inadequate or what the case may be, right? So from last year, they started receiving that subvention, and it is up to the Beekeeping Association to say this subvention, due to COVID-19, will need a little boost or what the case may be. But we sat down as the technical team, and yes, we discussed it, and it was not necessary to really put anything on paper right now.
All right, thank you very much. We move on to Clayton Clark, 92.7.
Good afternoon again to the panel. 3 questions, 2 to Mrs. Davidson Celestine. 1, so while the residents await the opening of the borders for the technicians to come in, can some plan or consideration be given to let them know when burning is taking place? Because they are suffering while, as all of us, yes, but they are suffering particularly, having to wait for the officials to come in. So can something be done? And again, I want to reiterate, can something be done to test them to see how they have been affected? Second question to Mr. Spencer, and then I'll come back to Ms. Davidson Celestine. You mentioned there was no consultation. Well, I think I'm saying that guardedly in this with your recent plan, but given the COVID-19 which has fallen upon us, do you think that consultation might have been warranted as, of course, plans would have changed, new restrictions, new constraints? I don't understand the whole thing of not having consultation, particularly with all these constraints that are going on now, that you have a plan maybe from whenever and you're just continuing with it, and we have severe changes and disruptions to our lives at the moment. My third question is to Madam Political Leader of the PNM Tobago Council. We are still awaiting. We expect to have a changeover of the post of Chief Secretary. In any way, is that affecting the THA's response as to who is in charge, who is leading the efforts, who is leading the charge, who is leading the efforts? You know, so, I mean, we have been hearing concerns from the minority, etc. Who is in charge? Who's running the show? What is going to happen in terms of leading the Tobago's response and decision-making, particularly in the fight against the COVID-19 outbreak? Thank you.
Thank you. So the first question to Mrs. Tracy Davidson Celestine, consideration to be given to inform the persons when it is burning and also to test them to see how they may be affected. More of a suggestion. I don't know if you have anything to add to it.
Well, as I indicated earlier, the health needs assessment will be done, and of course that will form part of it as well. And I just want to say there was a comment or question with regards to CDAP. We will look into that as well because we do not have that information. So we will ensure that communication is provided to the persons who are so affected as a result of the emissions.
Right. Mr. Spencer, about the consultation, if you don't think that they should have been consulted as plans may have changed amidst COVID-19.
Well, first of all, I want to say this. In the midst of COVID-19, where people are asked to stay at home, social distancing, you know, move only if it's absolutely necessary. Trying to do consultation at this particular time to go over data that you already have. Now, I will say this once again. It was the division responsibility to submit to the COVID-19 committee a response. I've been wearing two hats. One, as secretary of the food of the division, and also a member of the committee. So when I sat with my team in the division, we already have the data from the farming community. We already have a strategic plan, which was consulted. The end of the strategic plan is 2023. We recently developed an agriculture revitalization plan in consultation with the same farmers associations, the same Tobago Agriculture Society. So what is the THA doing now to boost food production on the island? I do not think that needs consultation. You have the information. Come up with the plan, come up with the policy, and this is the policy here.
All right, thank you very much. And the last one, as it pertains to the change of the Chief Secretary, and the specific question was who will lead the fight in COVID-19 amidst the change of the Chief Secretary.
Well, let me indicate to the members of the public that as the political leader of the PNM, I would have articulated before that the process for nomination of a Chief Secretary is well accounted for in the Tobago House of Assembly Act number 40 of 1996, Section 8, that when the position becomes vacant, another Chief Secretary will be chosen amongst all the assemblymen in the House. That has not happened yet. The Chief Secretary will demit office at the end of the month, as he would have indicated in his press conference. And so at that time, a new Chief Secretary will be selected who will continue to manage the affairs of Tobago going forward. At this point in time, I don't expect that there will be any gaps. It is one PNM at the end of the day and one Executive Council, and we will continue to ensure that we have a collaborative and team-building approach going forward when it comes to the management of the affairs of the people of Tobago.
Thank you very much. We move on to Elizabeth Williams, TV6 News.
Good afternoon, Elizabeth Williams, TV6 News. This question is to Mr. Spencer. The $7.62 million that you would have spoken of, Mr. Spencer, is this, or can we classify this as the stimulus package for the agricultural and food production sector in light of COVID-19? And also, my second question is for Mr. Ansel Dennis. With respect to the 5,000 food cards to be made available soon, how do people go about acquiring these cards? Who do they contact? Is there a specific number that persons can call?
All right. So the first question to Assemblyman Spencer, can the $7.625 million be classified as a stimulus package in light of COVID-19?
Yes. I'll say yes.
Simple answer.
Yes.
And we go on to Assemblyman Dennis. How can people access the food cards that you spoke about earlier? And any specific numbers to call, that kind of thing?
So the food cards, as I said, is a continuation of the process that we have ongoing now through the Division of Finance. Let me see if I could find the specific information, but it's already in the public domain. People can access the forms online. The forms are also available from all 12 assemblymen across the Tobago House of Assembly. So it's a matter of accessing the forms, filling them out, and submitting them either online or in hard copy to the same assemblymen. And that's the process.
All right, thank you. Go back to Akinlabi Holder, Tobago Channel 5.
Yes, I have, good afternoon again. I have a couple of questions again for Mr. Spencer. Mr. Spencer, you spoke about storage facilities expanding TICOSWAP as well as assisting farmers who might want to have their own storage facility. Exactly what kind of facility or what level of facility are you looking to help farmers gain, and how exactly are you going to fund the expansion of TICOSWAP? Is it going to be a physical expansion of TICOSWAP? Can you just elaborate on that first? One. Two, you stated how tractor pool currently works and that they've gotten rid of their backlog. So they should be smooth going forward from it. But considering the system that they currently use, it takes quite a while for them to get around to some farms. Whether the farmers will have just put in a request or not, there's no denying that it takes quite a while for tractor pool to get around to some farmers. So in this time where you're encouraging farmers to expand and even new farmers may come on board, the current system might become even more of a problem. So is there going to be a changing of the system to make tractor pool more efficient? And three, there are a couple of wildlife animals that are threat to farmers' crops, such as agouti and the orange-winged parrot. And there will be other animals as well. How do you seek to deal with these pests going forward while we are trying to establish food security?
All right. So the first question, the kind of facilities that you are aiming to utilize or to implement to increase the storage capacity for the farmers, and how will you fund them? Cold storage, that is.
Okay. At present, I don't know if the person that asking the question, if he's aware of how Tico Suave is of where and how it is set up at Nipdeck there, as we call it, at Shaw Park. It is divided into bays. So what Tico Suave, what we are looking at is utilizing the vacant bays, transforming them into cold storage facilities and chillers. It's not expanding the building. We are not increasing the size of the building. The bays already exist because, for example, one of the bays that became vacant was rented by a hardware supplier, and he has since moved out. That bay is empty. So we are saying that bay now can be transformed into both cold storage and chill facilities to augment what they're already doing, because they're already doing that for the farming and the fishing community and the business community. They are already doing cold storage and chilling facilities. So it's just to augment the number of bays that they have available so that they can increase the capacity of storage on the island.
All right. Is the second question, will there be a change in the system to deal with tractor pool to make it more efficient?
Well, I foresee no change in the system because I asked the very said question. Hence, we came up with the 2 additional tractors. With 2 additional tractors, the system will be efficient. And like I said, with the situation with the farmers, you have to understand, it's not your own tractor. So don't come and pay today and want your place prepared tomorrow. There must be a waiting period. We cannot get away from a waiting period.
All right, and the third question dealing with wildlife poachers and getting them under control.
Well, the wildlife situation has always been present. And even our forefathers dealt with it. I dealt with it as a farmer in my time of farming. And if you are planted in a particular area, your crop area, and there's the agouti, and the parrots and the cockatoo, they are now national birds, so it's illegal to kill them. What you should do is feed them so that they spare your crops. And it may sound simple. For example, this island is infested with what we call wild pawpaw. The humans don't eat it, but these are what the birds, the agouti, they all feed on. So if you could plant the borders of your farm with wild pawpaw, then you're feeding them, so they wouldn't come into your crop. So there are ways that the officers in the divisions, the wildlife officers, they've been going out there educating farmers on what they can do to ease that situation. I'm aware of the agouti being the pest, the cockatoos. I'm aware of it. It's not that I'm not aware, but there are ways in which to treat with it. Some I can say on the media, and some I would not be able to say. Okay?
All right, thank you. So I will move on to Cassandra Thompson-Forbes. I understand you were trying to get in for a while, but I didn't see your virtual hand. So Cassandra, you can go ahead, please.
Okay, good afternoon to the panel.
Good afternoon.
My first question is to Mr. Spencer. I know you said you spoke with the Agricultural Society and all of those. Can you indicate what contribution the fisher folk would have made? In addition to that, they indicated they were asked for their contributions over the period in light of this COVID-19 situation, and they were told that it was no longer needed. So I just want some clarification on that. My second question, are persons allowed to apply for both the THA food card and that from the Ministry of Social Development? My third question, and this goes to Secretary and the political leader of the Tobago Council. Do you think now is the right time for changing heads in Tobago? I know the situation with COVID-19 is taking up a lot of time and energy, and many persons, especially, I know the Prime Minister would have indicated, he does not have any, he's not thinking about politics at this time. So do you think now is the right time for heads to be changing in Tobago? And my final question, persons are asking about gratuities. I know you indicated that persons will be getting from 2017, 2018, but they are also asking about prior to that. Some are saying as far back as 2014. So what assurances can you give for persons awaiting gratuity prior to the period that you indicated that would be paid?
Thank you very much, Cassandra. Just slipping in that fourth question there. All right, so to Secretary Spencer, contribution from the fisher folk, what contribution they would have made to this planting initiative?
Okay, well, let me first clear that up. I heard you said that I met with the associations and so on. I did not meet with them, right? I did not meet with the fisher folk. I asked the fisheries director to meet with the fisher folk to see if there's any new thing that we can put as being a part of this COVID-19 response. Basically, every area where the fisher folk are concerned is already taken care of under the regular initiatives of the division, and also FIPCOT would have been given certain instructions. So these are already catered for, basically, right? So there was no need to include fisheries on this plan. They are already catered for and ongoing.
All right, thank you. So to Assemblyman Dennis, are persons allowed to apply for the food card coming out of the THA and the one from the Ministry of Social Development?
The answer is yes, depending on the circumstances. Now, the ministry's food card is the main source of social support. But of course, you're going to have situations where persons will apply, and I know of persons who applied since the beginning of the month, but the assistance has not been made available yet because it's going to take some time to be processed. And we are saying that if persons in those circumstances find themselves in difficulty, where there is absolutely no food to eat, and where they are in dire circumstances, then they can apply for the emergency food support. And again, that is a one-time food card, one use of $500.
All right, thank you. I'll move on to question 4 first. Gratuity and payment of that for persons who have outstanding from years as far back as 2014.
Well, I don't have that information with me. What I've been told and advised by the chairlady and the CEO at TRHA is that the outstanding gratuities pertain to 2017, 2018, and of course 2019. So what we are attempting to treat with now are those outstanding for 2017 and 2018. And if there are persons who have not received gratuity from 2014 I would ask that you provide the information to the HR officer or the CEO at the TRHA, because it's not accounted for in my documentation.
All right, and it's up to you if you are going to treat with the last one.
What was the last question?
Last
Sorry?
one, if this is the right time to change hands of leadership.
I think that, as I would have indicated earlier, this is one PNM. It's a collaborative approach going forward. I see all of us as a unified team going forward. And I'm of the view that now is an opportune time for new ways of growth and development. And so if it is that the change has to be made now, then so be it. That change will be made.
All right, thank you. So we going to our last round of questions. I see 3 people there as we seek to wrap up this media briefing. Whitfield.
Yes, my final round of questions. Secretary Davidson Celestine, if she can give us the updated figures as to how many samples from Tobago would have been sent for testing and how many would have been rejected. Also, for the record, can we have that hotline number for persons who are in need of counseling? And for Secretary Spencer, in terms of the opening up of agricultural access roads, what's being done on that front? And also, I got word a couple days ago about an infestation of locusts in the Mariah area. I'm not sure if he's aware of it and if they'll be looking to treat with that matter as well.
All right, thank you. Secretary Davidson Celestine.
In terms of the information with regards to the number of persons tested to date, we have 121. Number of samples testing positive, we have 5. 65 persons tested negative, and number of samples rejected to date, 28. And as we would have indicated in our previous press releases, it could very well be that those the information submitted was outside of the testing criteria. So 121 tested and 5 positive to date. 5 positive to date, yes.
All right, I do have as it pertains to the COVID-19 counseling support, it's several numbers, and we have counselors in both the East and the West. And I will list out the names. Donnelly at 789-8555. And this is Team West. Nicola, 730-9242. Derek at 788-3861. And Charlene at 730-7340. That's Team West. And Team East, we have Carol at 730-7390. We have Juliet at 684-2949 and Shelley at 686-9089. This information is on the division's website, on the Facebook page as well, but I will send an updated one to the media as well so that you could publicize on our behalf. On to Secretary Spencer, the issue with locusts, etc.
Okay, you asked a question as it relates to agriculture access road. Our agricultural access road plans for 2020, they are still on, but you have to remember this time with the COVID-19 pandemic, where even the contractors would have sent home their employees and so on, we have to hold up on that until we see exactly where this COVID-19 pandemic is going to lead us. So the 2020 agricultural access road plan is still there. You spoke of a locust infestation somewhere in Mariah. I'm not aware of this, and all up to yesterday, I had conversation with my technical officer. So I'm of the opinion that the division is not even aware, because it was not brought to my attention, of this locust infestation. However, we have capable officers in the division with the necessary technical skills and qualifications as it relates to these sort of pests, if you want to call them, And farmers will be advised in that area as to how to treat with this infestation of locusts, because as you are aware, I don't know if you are aware that these things are sort of seasonal, they always come around. So this is not the first time, right? And farmers, they will always be treated with accordingly.
All right, thank you. Clayton Clark, 92.7, your final questions.
Yes, good afternoon again.
Good afternoon.
Yes, Secretary Dennis, Assistant Secretary. I want to ask a question again, or maybe I need to rephrase it. You attempted to answer, but let me be clear on what I wish to ask. With regards to, I shouldn't say salary cuts. I'm asking about parts of salaries donated towards COVID-19 relief. You mentioned your personal preference in terms of choice, but I'm asking, do you think that maybe the Chief Secretary, or would you support a call that all assemblymen and councillors, that part of their salaries be used in the fighting or going to the assistance of persons of whom most of us are affected by the COVID-19 situation here in Tobago?
Yes, but with conditions. If we can have a system where the money will go into a separate account and be used for that specific purpose, then yes, I'm prepared to support that. But I'm also making the point that I made the call for all of Tobago, from Chief Secretary to councillors to assemblymen. Every single Tobagonian who is employed can engage in this voluntarily.
Thank you, Clayton. And our final question, Clayton, you have another question, sorry? Clayton, you have another question? All right, we move on to Akinlabi Holder, and this will be the final question for the media briefing. Akinlabi, you could go ahead. Akinlabi, you could go ahead.
Yes. Yes. My first question is for Secretary Davidson Celestin. Yesterday, Minority Assemblyman Faled said that he doesn't understand behind who is going to replace Kelvin Charles as Chief Secretary. Would you agree with such a statement, that it should be made public? It should be made public to the residents of Tobago, given the uncertainty of times, and just to ease people's fears? That's one question. Two is the packing house. This is for the Secretary of Agriculture or Production. Is the packing house operational? And if it's not, how soon can we get the packing house to be operational? And also, some of the incentives for the plan that you put out include reimbursements. Does the division think that the farmers on the island have enough capital to begin expansion operations without an initial cash injection from the division instead of the reimbursement? And also, is the 1 minute, please. 1 second. The Land Management Committee, which is responsible for considering and granting of land leases, the term of office expired since September last year. So how is land going to be disbursed?
All right. I will treat with the agriculture questions first. First thing is the packing house operational.
Yes, the packing house is operational, but I must indicate that it is operational manually. What we are moving to do, we are in the process of getting the packing house up and running automatively.
All right. The second question, do you think that the farmers have enough capital to facilitate the proposal for reimbursements?
Well, okay, sometimes we hear, as individuals, as people, sometimes we hear, but we don't listen. Because I specifically said the normal incentives is that you spend and you are reimbursed down the road. The COVID-19 incentive that I spoke of that amounted to the $7.625 million, those incentives were identified as incentives in starting up. which means that you will be given these incentives upfront. Okay? So I hope that clears up that question.
Right, and the next one, the Land Management Committee, claim that they would have expired since September last year. How would lands be distributed?
Well, as it relates to land management, it's not under my portfolio, so I'm not even aware that the Land Management Committee has expired. Land Management Affairs, land management is under the Office of the Chief Secretary, so I would not be able to answer that question.
All right, and Mrs. Davidson Celestin, if it is, well, the claim that that the new Chief Secretary or the consideration for the new Chief Secretary should be made public.
Well, my response to that is that the minority assemblyman has to familiarize himself with the Tobago House of Assembly Act, as I would have indicated earlier. Act 40 of 1996 spells out the procedure for the selection of a Chief Secretary when there is a vacant office. And so when that announcement is made, when the current Chief Secretary demits office, there is a process that will be triggered at that time. And so I would call on the minority assemblyman to familiarize himself with the Tobago House of Assembly Act 40 of 1996.
All right. And from that comment, I don't know if Secretary Davidson Celestin has any other rounds up to say or before we formally end.
All right. Well, let me thank you very much. I think this was, in fact, a very another round of successful press conference where we try to share information with the members of the public in terms of what we are doing from the level of the Tobago House of Assembly. And in some instances, questions were asked about the politics as well. In closing, I want to add a few things in terms of some of the policy initiatives that we would have looked at within the last week or so. And we are consistently bombarded with requests for information from supermarket owners and also for position from our members of staff who are health practitioners asking how do we treat with health practitioners wearing scrubs in the public domain. And so our policy position is at this point in time, we are asking the health practitioners to not wear scrubs in the public domain. Take them off and leave them, if possible, at your place of work, or put them in a sealed bag for, of course, laundering at some point in time. So we're asking health practitioners to not wear scrubs in the public domain. We have also received reports from those who are employed at the health centers or nurse managers, so to speak, and we are still seeing an unnecessary visits. We are still seeing unnecessary visits to the health centers. We are asking persons to only visit the health centers if it is absolutely necessary. And also to utilize the hotlines, the numbers for which have been provided endlessly to you, the members of the public utilizing our social media, and quite a lot of different communication modes over the last few weeks and months, so to speak. I want to say that the team in the Division of Health, Wellness and Family Development, we continue to work to better the lives of the people in Tobago, and we in the Tobago House of Assembly, we continue to chart the course for the continued development of Tobago. At this point in time, what we are seeing, and members of the media would have asked the question, it's a change in terms of not the leadership per se, but we are changing the guards at this point, and I expect that the process would be a very smooth one going forward. As I did indicate, we are all members of one team. We will be working collaboratively going forward, and I would expect the best level of representation from all the secretaries and assistant secretaries, and more so the assemblymen who are on our side. And so this is this is normal. We have had an election within the PNM, and also this is normal in the world over. When someone wins a particular position, the changes are expected, and so it is also happening at this time for us. But at the end of the day, I would expect that there would be no gaps, and we will continue to ensure that the views and the development of Tobago continues in that regard.
All right, so I'll firstly say thanks to our panelists for being available and making yourselves available, for being a part of this media briefing. I do thank members of the media as well for your questions. We do appreciate them, and through your eyes is where we get to share a lot of the information that we have with the public. I do thank all our viewers who took the time out to view and to engage with us, to be a part of this media briefing. I want to remind persons we are still in the stay-at-home, under the stay-at-home order, so we are encouraging persons to practice your preventative measures if or when you go out. And those preventative measures, we are asked to wear masks, we are asked to wash our hands at least 20 seconds frequently, use a hand sanitizer, at least 60% of alcohol, several other initiatives, and your social distancing in particular, where we know it has increased to 6 feet, so just ensure to practice all the preventative measures. This is something that affects us all, and it is actually, some aspects of it is preventable based on how we conduct ourselves. So remember to stay at home, stay safe, and we save lives by doing that. It has indeed been a pleasure. Thank you very much. Have a wonderful afternoon.